How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brown Logan, and today we got to talk about the increase in the murder rate and the overall crime rate in many urban inner cities where you've had Black Lives Matter protests. But most specifically, we're talking about Baltimore, Maryland today, as you can see by the headline on the screen before you. Baltimore residents blaming murder increase on lack of police after Black Lives, L-I-E-S, not L-I-V-E-S, matter. Protesters demanded pullback. Now, this was predictable. I said this was going to happen from the beginning. When was this going on? Like 2014, 2015. I said right when it was going on, when you have the police pull back, you're going to see an increase in the crime rate, in the murder rate, in the assault, kidnapping, robbery, whatever. I knew that it was going to happen. This is predictable. The same thing can be said about stop and frisk in New York. Now, the crime has dropped in New York, but not because they have decreased stop and frisk. The crime has decreased in New York because the population of New York has changed, and there's a lot of book cooking going on. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But when you get rid of tried and true practices that aid in eliminating crime or reducing crime, you're going to get more of it, or you're going to get some negative results you did not anticipate. But before I even get into my whole diatribe about that, let's get into the article and see exactly what it says. You know, of course, you got the picture of the protesters, don't even know what they're protesting. They're out there just, you know, and probably some of them same people live in the crime-ridden neighborhoods where they wish they had the police presence the way it's supposed to be now. Maybe they've been the victim of different crimes, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get into the article. All right. This is by Warner Todd Houston or Huston. It says Black American residents of Baltimore, Maryland are now blaming a lower police presence for the city's soaring murder rate, despite 3 years of Black Lives Matter BLM activists insisting that police be pulled from their neighborhoods. Like I said, very predictable. This is not rocket science. OK, you have a high crime area. When you have less police, you're going to have more crime. It's very simple. Back to the article. Baltimore has now experienced higher murder rates for 3 years in a row after riots and Black Lives Matter sponsored protests began rocking the city after the death of Freddie Gray, a suspect who died in police custody in the spring of 2015. National Public Radio, NPR, reported. NPR is interesting. I'm starting to see a lot more real news from NPR, and NPR is notoriously left. I'm talking like extreme left. So it's interesting now that they're reporting on stories like this, but I digress. Since the riots, police morale has collapsed and city officials began planning a lighter police footprint in response to complaints of residents and protest leaders. But now Black leaders are blaming cops for the spiraling murder rate, saying the police pullback has put them in danger. So it's like, okay, the same Black leaders who were saying, okay, police, you're doing too much. You're over policing, whatever that means. You're over policing. I'm using air quotes here if you can't see me. You're over policing our neighborhoods. So we want you to pull back. But now that the murder rate has gone up, we want you to go back to what you did before we said don't do it. It's dumb. The Reverend Kinji Scott, a Baltimore activist, is blaming City Hall for leaving the neighborhoods unprotected. Quote, we wanted the police there, unquote, Scott insisted. We wanted them engaged in the community. We didn't want them beating the H out of us. We didn't want that. Okay, so, I mean, who are they beating up? Are they beating up just regular everyday people? Are they beating up grandmas, single moms with their babies? Are they beating up homeless people that, you know, are drug addicts? Like, who are they beating up? Are they beating up the people that need to get beat up? Don't get triggered when I say that. Yes, I said it. Some people need to be beat up. If you're out here endangering people, shooting into occupied dwellings with old ladies and little kids, maybe you need to get beat up. OK, now in the Freddie Gray situation, who knows what happened? Nobody really knows what happened. All that we know is that he died in police custody. People talking about a bumpy ride, this, that, and the third. The police were found not guilty. Their whole thing has been thrown out. So nobody really knows what happened. But at the end of the day, the people who need to get roughed up do get roughed up. I've not seen any examples of just regular everyday lollipop and sunshine kids and grandmas and women and all of that get beat up. But let's get back to the article. Scott and others are now pressuring the city to bring police back in as a deterrent to the soaring crime rate. Despite the loud proclamations from Black Lives Matter activists that the police are the problem, Scott and his fellow activists are now claiming that they never wanted the police to go away. In an interview with NPR, Scott claims only the progressive activists wanted cops to be eliminated. And this is part of what he says here from the NPR report. And if I can find that report, I'll link to that in the description box below. It says, no, that represented our progressives, our activists, our liberal journalists, our politicians, but it did not represent the overall community, because we know for a fact that around the time Freddie Gray was killed, see that right there, triggered. Who knows how he died? He died, but don't nobody know how he got, like, there's no evidence of him being killed by somebody. He just died in police custody. It's a difference. You know, if somebody dies of natural causes, like if you got somebody that's like 100 years old and they just pass away, you're not going to say X, Y, and Z person was killed. You're going to say X, Y, and Z person died. We start to see homicides increase. We have had 5 homicides in the neighborhood while we were protesting. What I wanted to see happen was that people would be able to trust the relationship with our police department so that they could feel more comfortable. We have conversations with the police about crime in their neighborhoods because they will feel safer. So we wanted the police there. We wanted them engaged in the community. We didn't want them beating the H out of us. We didn't want that. Scott also blamed the city for not fostering a community atmosphere between police and the neighborhoods. The primary thrust nationwide is what President Obama wanted to do, focus on building relationships with police departments in major cities where there had been a history of conflict. That hasn't happened. We don't see that. I don't know what city, Baltimore for certain, we've not seen any changes in relationships. What we have seen is that the police has distanced themselves and the community has distanced themselves even further. So the divide has really intensified. It hasn't decreased. Well, what do you expect? I mean, with all the hateful rhetoric being spewed at the police, with police being a target, with police being basically forced out, because you had to understand, while you can say that the community did not want the police to be removed, who has a louder voice? The protesters out there who your mayor supports, your attorney general, Marilyn Mosby, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, she was mayor at the time. Your people who are the biggest positions and the most impactful voices support the protesters, and the protesters are saying, police get out. So then therefore, people in the community that are also very vocal, who may not necessarily be in politics or outside activists like D. Ray McKesson from Black Lives Matter, Sean King, formerly of Black Lives Matter, a white guy in blackface, LARPing as a black person, but I digress. These people are very loud and they get the most attention. Therefore, people in the community follow them. So the message is police get out. We don't want you. And when the police do come, you got a whole neighborhood, a whole block descending upon them with cell phones and stuff like that, talking about some, I know my rights, is that and the third. Then do lawyers who don't know anything come out there and harass the police. So what are the police going to do but pull away? They have no other alternative. OK, so as a result of that whole situation, the residents are going to pull away as well, because the residents, like I said, they don't want the police there due to the outside influence who is stronger than the reverends and these so-called community leaders. The television and the outside activists put together are a stronger force than you, whoever this guy is talking. I don't even know who he is. And that's the point. I know who D-Ray is. Everybody knows who that guy is if you pay any mind to the whole Black Lives Matter situation. OK, so the stronger influence is going to impact the whole narrative. And that's what that is. Back to the article. And of course, we want to delineate the whole culture of bad policing that exists. Nobody denies that. But as a result of this, we don't see the level of policing we need in our community to keep the crime down in our cities that we are seeing bleed to death. Well, look, you know, you can't complain about so-called over policing and then say that you're not getting enough policing. Which one is it? Or is it too much policing or is it not enough? I mean, you tell me. I think that you need to have the appropriate level of police presence in the place determined by the crime rate. And this whole thing about community outreach and, you know, cops going out there playing basketball and kissing babies. I mean, that's not their job. Their job is to go out there and be co-enforcers to serve and protect. Right. You call the police when you're in trouble. You don't call the police for a pickup game of basketball. You don't call the police to play dominoes or spades or something like that. The police aren't there necessarily to be your buddies. The police are there to be code enforcers and to try to ensure your safety as much as possible. If you had a friendly neighborhood, maybe the police would be able to be a little bit more friendly. They could develop relationships with people. They can go out there on the beat and walk without fear of being sniped from some apartment from some den dude who just wants to kill the police, who has been fed the hateful rhetoric by the news media, Black Lives Matter, NAACP, Antifa, et cetera, so on and so forth. But let's get back to the article and wrap it on up. This is despite Baltimore protesters carrying signs that read things such as disarm the police or wearing T-shirts promising to kill cops. The reference claims also seem to fly in the face of a list of 19 demands issued by protesters in 2015, one of which demanded that police be barred from entering certain buildings or parts of neighborhoods that they had designated as safe from police. Clearly, the protesters wanted police removed from Baltimore's neighborhoods, but now they've gotten their wish. Community leaders have suddenly realized what a bad idea such a pullback is. I mean, this is a very simple thing to understand. I've been saying this from the beginning. I said, look, when you take away the police, what are you going to have? The truth is that the police are the last bastion of hope in the black community. They are the last line of defense. Really, they're the only line of defense. When you have a community that is 76% or whatever big number it is, single mothers raising children, who's going to be there to protect the community from any outside force? It doesn't matter if it's the police. It doesn't matter if it's a terrorist. It doesn't matter if it's just some random nut who wants to just wreak havoc in the place, the drug dealer, the dope boy, the crazy drug addict who's going to go and do whatever they can to get their fix, to get money for their fix. Who's going to be there to protect them from those forces? There's nobody. There's no men. And what are the women going to do? The women can't protect, a community from these crazed men and or women, people in general. I don't want to misgender. I don't want to put anybody into a gender box, but I'm gonna move on from that. But you get my point. The police are the last bastion of hope. Without the police, you have no protection. And the proof is in the pudding. You see the headline right here. When you pull away the police in these high crime areas, poverty ridden single mother households, you're going to have a negative result. And that same thing can be seen all over the country. And I'll put some links if I can find some, scrunch them up. I'll put them in the description box below so you're able to see exactly what happens when the police are removed from a place where the police are needed. If you want to have a lower police presence and beautiful relationships between the police and the neighborhood, you need to have a better neighborhood. You need to have a neighborhood that the environment is conducive for such a thing to happen. You cannot have a dangerous, crime-ridden, drug-infested neighborhood and then have it be like Mayberry. You understand what I'm saying? That's just not possible. In a very rough neighborhood, you got to have rough policing. Okay. How does the old saying go, or the relatively new saying? It takes the wolf to defeat a wolf, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You can't be so nice, cuddly, and soft in a very dangerous environment. The result is going to be what you see right here on the screen before you. So what do you think? Do you think that more police are needed in areas where you have high crime? I think that's a pretty obvious thing to say. I mean, I don't understand why anybody would think anything differently. If you think differently, then you're just not living in reality. And a lot of the outside people who come into a place, they say, oh, well, nah, it's not needed. You violating my rights, is that and the third. But what about those who actually live there? The single mothers, the grandmas, the innocent kids who cannot protect themselves. What are they going to say? If you say, hey, do you want stop and frisk? Like, here's an example, because I got a lot of kickback on the stop and frisk video I did. And stop and frisk and the Baltimore police presence kind of are one and the same. And I'll explain. The stop and frisk thing they were doing in New York, the whole purpose of that was to reduce crime in high crime areas, to protect the people of the area. Okay. People have to live there. The minority people, the black, brown, whatever, it was to protect them. And it was very effective. I saw a stat that said that it reduced crime by like 70%. And even in the study where they said that it wasn't really effective, they said that 20% of people that were stopped and frisked had drugs and or weapons on them. So 20% is a big number. What if you came to somebody and said, hey, stop and frisk, if we put that in your neighborhood, you can reduce crime by half, 50%. Murder, rape, robbery, all of that can be reduced by half. If you don't have stop and frisk, you're going to have high crime. And then we're going to put police in the neighborhood. We're going to have, beat cops, patrol cops, bigger police presence in your neighborhood. And that'll drop crime by another 25%. So 75% decrease in crime. You might have kids. They might want to go outside and play and be children and not be locked in their prison of a project house. You understand what I'm saying? Would you just take it, or you be like, nah, I want to feel free, this, that, and the third? How free are you if you can't even go outside and play with your kids? So think about it like that. But do you think that we need less police, that we don't need stop and frisk? Now, if that's your answer, then how are we going to fight the crime? Because obviously when you get rid of the crime fighting measures that we need in high crime areas, you're going to have more crime. So what is your solution to the high crime? Now, I think the main thing would be to get everybody out of a high crime area, but that's not always possible. Some people are going to live in high crime areas, maybe not for a long time, maybe temporarily, because we all fall on hard times. But what would your solution be to the high crime situation in high crime areas? Whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.